Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today in this important conference, talking about the light from the depth of centuries. In my capacity, I have been asked to talk something about the Uzbekistan's rich and diverse written heritage as described in the World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts. We are talking about the Islamic written heritage, in this case the Uzbekistan's rich and diverse written heritage, but yet I start my humble presentation with the digital portal. The reason for that, the reason why I chose to start with this is the fact that we live in a digital era. One of the challenges that we face nowadays is the fact that not only the manuscripts, but also the catalogs of manuscripts in today's world became dormant. It is very difficult not only to reach to the libraries and the archives which held manuscripts, but it is very difficult to get hold of any catalog of manuscripts as well, due to the limitation of the distribution and the issue that if you were looking after a certain manuscript, that means that you have to sift through all the catalogs that have been published, and if you are lucky, you might come across your desire, what you are looking for. Otherwise, you might end up sieving through tens of thousands of pages and yet do not find anything. Therefore, the digital age does make things easier, not only by telling us whether such manuscript exists, but also where the copies of such a manuscript are, in what condition they are, how many copies there are, etc. So the full story. Therefore, Furqan Islamic Heritage Foundation, if you might know that its main goal and aim has been, in the last 3 decades, to survey, catalog, and study and publish the Islamic written heritage. Just a footnote, when we say Islamic heritage, I'm sure that most of you are experts in this regard, but very often we face questions, are we talking about the manuscripts that talk about Islam? And the answer is no. What we are talking here about is all the sciences, all the fields of knowledge that have been produced during the so-called Islamic era, in all fields of science. And also what we mean by the Islamic written heritage is all the works, all the written codices or books that have been written in different so-called Islamic languages. As you know, the lingua franca of that time used to be Arabic language, then became the Persian, then the Ottoman language, Urdu beside that, and many other local languages in Africa and other regions. From the nature of our work, Furqan started with a major project of surveying the Islamic written heritage. It was a time when it wasn't clear as to how many Islamic manuscripts are around the world, in which countries they are, in which libraries, in which cities, which towns, etc. Therefore, Furqan undertook this flagship project called the World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts. A group of scholars were identified and they were spread around the world. They visited 106 countries, so each library, each collection, each city where supposedly there were any number of Islamic manuscripts, they were visited and identified, and this project was published in 1994 under the title The World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts. It became clear that the Islamic written heritage is not a legend, but rather a truth, and the number of books is in hundreds of thousands. So according to the World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts, it became clear that the approximate number of Islamic manuscripts exceed 1.5 million around the world. I must here make few footnotes. When we say 1.5 million, we don't necessarily mean that there are 1.5 million titles, but rather copies of manuscripts. It might happen that one book might have more than a copy. But in the world of manuscripts, as you may know, each manuscript has got its own importance. It's a world on its own. It can be another copy. It can be another edition. It can have a lot of comments which might be missed from the previous copy, and so on. Another footnote, very important one, is the fact that the World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts looked only at an institutional level. In 106 countries, more than 2,000 cities were visited at the time, thousands of collections and libraries. The World Survey tried to identify the main collections and to look at the estimate number of such collections, because many of these collections were not opened at all, were not studied at all, were not inventoried probably at all. Few of them might have had some hand lists, but not extensive or comprehensive catalogues, etc. So the challenge was huge. Therefore, the project came to a conclusion with many numbers, which I must again drive your attention to the fact that the World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts in today's term is outdated. You might ask me, so why you're talking about this anymore? Well, the World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts that was undertaken by Furqan is the only up-to-date. No comprehensive survey was done so far. What we are doing is the fact that, as you know, the world of manuscripts is dynamic. It changes. Manuscripts move around. Some of them, unfortunately, get destroyed due to many reasons and many weather conditions, conflicts, and etc. Therefore, many of these numbers that I'll be mentioning during my short presentation today are outdated. But the reason why I'm doing this presentation today is more a call, knowing that in front of me are sitting scholars in this field, are sitting responsible of people that are responsible of many institutions, libraries. Therefore, what we have done is this World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts, which is in both languages, Arabic and English, which was in a printed version. As much as we have tried to distribute as a work, its impact was limited. So what we have done, we have flattened this World Survey into an online searchable database, which is cross-searchable. It gives the whole picture. It's very easy to reach to the results. And then we are now in a stage when we started to update this World Survey. So what we are doing is we contact different institutions, different libraries, and kindly ask them to update whether there is anything new in terms of numbers, in terms of catalogues, because at the time when the survey was done, some of these manuscripts, as I mentioned before, were catalogued, some of them were not catalogued at all, some of them were hand-listed, some of them had no hand list whatsoever, and I have to say probably a lot of these collections up to date remain as such, as an enigma. No one knows how many there are, what titles there are, especially when we talk about the collections of manuscripts. You know, manuscripts that are binded within one binding. That is very difficult to know what's inside. In some instances, you might find 5 theses inside one collection. In some instances, you find even more than that, up to 25, up to 30, while the whole collection is unknown. So what we have done is really, we have flattened this world survey. So we work on 3 dimensions. Furqan, when it comes to the world of manuscripts, besides many other fields of interest, in the world of manuscripts, we have a 3-dimensional approach. The first dimension is the survey. So we try to identify, to follow up, and to survey the Islamic written heritage around the world. Its movements. As you know, there were countries in the 90s that ceased to exist probably. Some of them changed their names. Some of the libraries are not there anymore. There were new libraries created. There were new collections that were taken from a certain place and were joined to another collection. So, as I mentioned, the world of manuscripts is very dynamic. Therefore, we continue to update this survey, and we call upon different institutions for cooperation and help to update this world survey, which is an open source, is online, is free of charge, and is very helpful to the researchers and the scholars that are interested in this field. The second dimension is, after we do the survey, it comes to our attention that there are very important collections that have no catalogs or haven't been identified at all. Hence, we embark on a cataloging project. We as Furqan, we have catalogued so far, during the last 3 decades, more than 80,000 manuscripts around the world. When I say catalogued, I mean a comprehensive cataloging process, a very detailed cataloging process. But really, whoever looks at our cataloging card will see that the cataloging card of Furqan is very comprehensive, is very detailed, because otherwise, if you have only a hand list for any research in this field, it's not going to be clear whether that's another copy, what copy it is, who is the copyist of that manuscript, what year was copied, is it the first copy, is it the last one, is it the autograph, and so many other related details to these manuscripts. Therefore, we don't believe in a short type of cataloging, but rather a comprehensive one. Not only that, we believe that the cataloging data is very important as a first step to help the researchers in this field, but ultimately our next step in the future will be to support any cataloging data with images of manuscripts. That will be the ultimate goal. Therefore, this is again a call upon institutions that what we do is really, we approach such institutions, we ask for their catalogs. If it happens that they have a database, we say, okay, in that case, let's interconnect. So we connect our database, we interlink our database with the respective database that they have, so that any reader, any researcher that comes through our online gateway, they end up in the respective institution, and vice versa. Whoever gets through their own gateway, they end up in our gateway. And this is the step that we have undertaken recently. So we have uploaded online all our catalogs of Islamic manuscripts, all the catalogs that we have catalogued, all the manuscripts that we have catalogued. We are now in process of asking permissions, because we don't do anything. We respect completely the copyrights and the wills of the institutions or the manuscript holders. So we ask for permission that if they have catalogs, we can host their database, if they don't happen to have such an infrastructure. And if they have, as I said, we suggest that we interlink. And also we have started now the process of negotiating with different institutions to host the images of their respective collections. And we have made some progress in this regard, but the process is quite slow. So far, our online database of Islamic manuscripts hold around 135,000 manuscripts, so our initial catalogue manuscripts, plus some of the manuscripts or cataloging cards that have been cataloged by other institutions, and this number is growing day by day. This is the second dimension about cataloging, and the third dimension of our work is that after surveying, after knowing where such huge collections are, and identifying the most important collections, because as you know, there are so many collections around the world, but one has to prioritize. There are more important, there are less important, there are copies of copies, and there are original and very important manuscripts, rare manuscripts. So in our position, we have to prioritize the collections around the world. Hence, we work with the most important, then less important, then less important. And the third dimension of our approach is to identify the most important manuscripts that haven't been edited or critically edited, and we embark into an editing or critical editing project of such manuscripts. Just in 2-3 minutes, talking about Uzbekistan's rich heritage, we cannot deny the fact that looking at the World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts, there is a spot in the world a very important spot in the world, Uzbekistan, that holds a major number and very important collections of Islamic manuscripts. According to the World Survey, there are 21 collections of manuscripts in Uzbekistan, 20 of them being public and one of them being private. Now, my Uzbek colleagues might, disagree with me. They might say that this number is outdated, it changed. Well, that's why I am here and that's why I'm calling today. Basically, we need their help to update any such numbers. And these numbers, or this the overall number, according to the World Survey, reaches around 40,000 manuscripts. Again, with a major footnote that we are talking about collections that few or many of them haven't been properly catalogued and identified. This number is very likely to grow rapidly. And as I mentioned also, we are talking about the manuscript collections in Uzbekistan and elsewhere on a public level, on an institutional level. But as you know, in the Islamic world, for instance, in Morocco, in Mauritania, in many of these countries, probably the number of manuscripts that are held by private collectors, by families, in some cases might be even larger than the ones that are in certain institutions. Therefore, the number of 1.5 million is quite modest. I mean, there are scholars that bring this number to 5 million. In Uzbekistan, as I mentioned, the main collections out of the 21 are held in the following cities. We have 8 collections in Tashkent, we have 3 collections in Andijan, we have 3 collections in Bukhara, 3 collections in Samarkand, 1 collection in Khiva, 1 collection in Kokand, 1 collection in Nukus, and 1 collection in Termez. Out of 21 libraries, there is 1 private, 20 institutional. When it comes to the date of establishment, there is 1 library that was established during the period of 1800-1899, and there are 9 libraries that were established in the period between 1900 1950. There are 2 collections or libraries that were established in the period of 1951 to 1999, and 9 collections that are unknown the date of their establishment. The sizes of collections as well are identified. So from 1 to 200 manuscripts there are at least 6 collections. From 200 to 600 there are 5 collections. From 600 to 5,000 there are 4 collections. From 5,000 to 10,000 manuscripts there is 1 collection. From 10,000 to 20,000 there is 1 collection, and there are 4 collections that are unknown. In terms of the language, the Arabic is the predominant language of these manuscripts. We are talking about 12 major collections that are mainly in Arabic, 10 of them mainly in Persian, in Turkic 6, in Turkish 3, Chagatai 1, Pashto 1, Urdu 1, Uzbek 1, and so etc. And finally, the subjects that are covered within these manuscript collections are from a wide range of subjects, starting with Aqidah, arts, astrology, astronomy, biographies, Christianity, correspondence, encyclopedias, ethics, fiqh, folklore, geography, grammar, history, lexicography, literature, mantiq or logic, mathematics, medicine, music, pharmacology, philosophy, poetry, Quran copies, religions, rhetoric, and Sufism. So this is in a nutshell the story of the World Survey, the story of our online digital portal, and the story of the rich and diverse written heritage of Uzbekistan. Obviously, the time is very limited. I wouldn't be able to go into more details, but this is just a brief overview, but moreover, a call to our Uzbek colleagues for cooperation and keeping contacts so that we could help each other in shedding light into this vast and very important Islamic and human heritage. Thank you very much for your attention.